I would like you all to join me in welcoming Rika from Google to the stage. If you have have a seat. I found these very awkward myself, so...
I think I have to turn this thing around so I have to put my feet as well.
That was
yeah,
the trick.
there we go. That was better.
There we go, now casual. This is a silly question to start off with, right?
I don't know.
Is Google data-driven internally?
I
say this.
No, you're smiling, and, and it is actually a relevant question.
Okay.
We're very, very data-driven, but what's very different from me working in Google now from where I've been before, we used to have kind of decide on the systems that has the truth, right? And decide what are the core systems where data stays, and then everyone has to follow through that and make the best of it.
Yes.
In Google, we have a ton of data, and a lot of it is also more freely floating around for individual interpretation.
Okay. Yeah.
And then also sometimes we have different systems that are actually more or less doing the same thing because it's a big company, right? And then we choose the one eventually that most users, in this case employees, like and use.
Yes.
So it was a change for me that it's not like management says you have to walk in that direction and look in that system for your data. Here there's a lot of, I would say, freedom.
Yes.
On how you activate the data we have available. I think maybe another important point is that in the end, we want the best of our developers to work on all the external tools.
Okay.
So internal tools, they need to work. They don't have to be magical. That's for our users.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
That's very revealing. I did not know that. How you've heard a couple of stories so far, maybe you've talked to a few people here already. How similar is Google's growth story with data than Saxo Banks and, implements and Sitecores and, I mean in this, I would say there's a theme in the, first of all, we need to put some technology in place to store this data and manage it, and then maybe the data warehouse is the next natural progression. How similar is Google's story to that?
I mean, I think that, of course, we need super secure data centers to handle all of the world's information.
Yes.
So I also do believe that we probably have some of the best data centers in the world today because we've done this ever since 1998, right? It's not something that just came around. But the vision wasn't to start with setting all the structure. The vision was to make something, a unique search engine where people could find something. So it's always been driven by the user's need. What does the user want? And then afterwards, we turn around and we think about, how do we make business out of this?
Yeah.
And in most of the companies, I work as an industry manager for finance, so I actually work with a lot of the financial players, both early on in the US and now here. I find that, especially in banking, if you want to do anything, bring me a good business case.
Yeah.
And if we had driven our business that way, I think bring me a good user case. If the user is going to love it, we're going to do it. Then we're going to figure out down the line how the heck are we going to make money on this. Because it doesn't come first. And I actually think that's key to some of the questions we have here around, does it make sense for the business? Maybe we should ask more, does this make sense for the user? If we're delivering a service as an insurance company, as any given company, does this really create value with the users? And for sure, usually when it's super user-centric, it's not a clear business case on how it makes value to us because we need to invest a lot first and then figure it out.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? So I think in that sense, I think it's different. That does not mean that we don't have very good control on our data today. Good. We have a need for that for sure. And also today, we actually stopped up and found out, wow, we are really good at this cloud and data centers. We've done it for so many years internally. Why are we not offering this to our clients? So that's how cloud became a product. And, it wasn't. It was never invented for being a product.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the next natural question would be how much of your internal tools that help you become data-driven do you expose to the rest of the world to become data-driven as well?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have a number for you, that's for sure. But of course, you can look at data in two ways, because it could be the same data underneath, but of course a lot of our data is completely anonymized, so we don't know who it is. But when we aggregate it up, I think we share a lot of our data on what is going on. What is it that the users want, and how do we get there? But of course, details leveled. Some of that data you would have is more detailed when you look at it from an integral lens, and you can learn even more. I mean, but sharing-wise, you always would have to aggregate, make sure it's anonymous, and that, of course, you're allowed to even share it with anyone. I do think we share a lot of our data in the format that we can, if it makes sense for our clients on how they can grow their business. I mean, something like market insights, and we have a lot of these free tools where a lot of you guys can look up anything you want to understand trends in the market. So I think we're all generating that. We also kind of have a right to use it on the other side.
It is worth mentioning that data from the keynotes was from Google Trends, the market data.
There you go.
So you also mentioned external tools, and they're the ones that typically make it to the hands of the end customer. And and I also know that Google acquires a lot of smaller companies to bring on knowledge from learn from them. How much of innovation do you think is coming from talking to these smaller companies that you acquire versus something that's more organically driven from the company itself? How much do you learn from startups?
We learn a ton, and I think we all will if we pay attention and listen and bring them in. I think the biggest challenge that I see, not just in a Google context, but a lot of companies struggling with, is that when we then put our, very rigid, sorry to say, model down on a startup, then we kill all the fun, right? Now they stop being innovative because now they have to put all the data in that system by that date, and now the inspiration, the fun disappears. And I think in that sense, I actually think Google is very entrepreneurial still, because there is there's still chaos on the inside, but in a good way. Figure it out, talk to each other. But we're very cautious about not investing too much time on developing structured systems internally to tell us what to do, because they want each of us to also all the time challenge and think outside of the box. I think one of the key elements that I find personally very motivating working in Google, but also that helps drive the innovation path, is this idea of having 20% projects. I mean, it works the best if you're in development. I'm in sales, so it's just work 120% and you're all good. But if you're a developer, they would actually take out regular work for you to do and give you 20% of your time to develop any crazy new idea that you believe is the new black, right? And to have something like that as a structured way of working, you are really encouraging. And still, also, I do a lot of 20% projects out of stuff that I think is important. And I find the time to bring that in, and I think that's an important part of the culture. Don't kill the ideas. Don't kill this person that has this idea that's completely out of the main strategy.
I think Google taught pretty much every company that there is value in that.
There is value in that, and it is a balance. Of course, we're also a really big company now, and you need to balance it, but I still think it keeps us alive. And it really allows to say, we know that the brilliant idea can come from any one of you. It's not actually not very top management driven, I would say. I mean, I find myself in this really important discussions between departments, and if I ask a colleague, in the end, is it me or them who decides? Nobody knows. It's not, but it's not a hierarchy where, but they trump you. That's not how it works. It's a dialogue. We find the best solution, and then we might have to discuss a little late sometimes to agree. But we it's not that top-driven, which actually, personally, I had my own startup for years. I appreciate.
Speaking of solutions, your customers, do you see, when you're making your customers data-driven, and you said your focus was mainly in finance and insurance here in Denmark, do you see any patterns of what makes those solutions successful versus where do we fall down? Is there any patterns there you can teach us about?
Well, first off, I don't make them data-driven. They make them data-driven, and I see if I can inspire and help from the side, just to make
Good clarification,
Well, I think it was also mentioned a bit before, we have to be really careful about making, we have this AI initiative just to please the board or please the shareholders. It has to be super meaningful and be based in a business challenge you have a urge to solve. Because just to do AI because we have to be on the wave, I mean, it's probably fine, you start practicing, but you can't expect that that's going to have priority when the shit hits the fans and you don't have resources enough.
Yes.
So I think one of the key things that most people underestimate is really classic crap in, crap out. Do we underestimate what is the pieces of data that we do want to look at? What is the actual business problem we're trying to solve? When that is in place and we do agree this is important and we know we need to work with this data, then you need to really kind of try and isolate that team to focus on it like you would do with any innovation project.
Yes.
Because if it's something out of the ordinary of what you usually do, again, be careful, a bit like with a startup, that you don't suffocate them before they get to success.
Yeah, good point, good point. Do you have any examples of customers you could talk about that it's very easy for us to understand they took a data-driven approach, it was successful, and the data-driven approach was the right approach, not the typical, probably the typical approaches you're seeing with other companies as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes I actually think it's strikingly simple solutions that sometimes have the biggest impact.
Okay.
This is not an example. We already heard a lot about Unity, so I'm going to skip them. That was one of the examples that I would want to give. But Spotify, for instance, is another client that has been able to just pick up little clever data points and really use them, both in advertising, but also they use your behavior on that to decide what is being developed and what comes next. Netflix does the same. What kind of show should we produce? Well, let's look at what they want. User-centric. Spotify had this, I think brilliant campaign not long ago where they looked at, this person has been playing this song for 120 times on Valentine's Day. It was a really sad love song, and they would use that in their advertising saying, man, this person played this song, and of course not the real person, but just, we feel for you, we hope you're okay. So the fact that you're actually trying to look at user behavior to make it meaningful, and I'm pretty sure that's not the only person who had a crappy Valentine, so a lot of others would look at that and say, yeah, I can relate to this. So I think using data points simple sometimes can be actually stronger than making it too complicated. You can always add on the complexity once you can see it works. When you add lots of data points and complexity from the beginning, sometimes it actually, if there are issues, and sometimes there are on data and other things, it makes it hard to identify. If you start simple and wow, this is running, this is meaningful, this we can use, then you can add layers. So I would actually really say start simple. If I know that I saw that Saxo Bank already have been sharing, so I think they should definitely share themselves. But that's definitely a finance client where I'm deeply impressed on the level of data-driven activities they have across the board, whether it's on the internal data side, whether it's for their investment platform or it's for marketing. All the way through, they are sincerely trying to build the best possible consumer journey and activate all the data they have available. So I think they're a good example from the finance area where I've been impressed.
For everyone else, what would be your advice? I mean, we are all struggling as companies, and I think I would like to draw back to the slide we had earlier in the day. We showed the data landscape, and essentially we were just showing all the different components that a company needs to be much more data-driven. There was a data warehouse there was cloud storage, there was the data privacy pieces around consent and things like that. And this overwhelming landscape makes it is overwhelming to even start getting value out of data. For everyone in this room, they want to solve their problems. What would be your advice?
Find the user case rather than the business case.
Okay.
Because if you start simple and you do it that way, you're creating a value, the money's going to come. The income, it's not that I say you should do stuff for fun, for free, and never make money on it, you will. But I think we are overcomplicated in the way we try and find the right case to work on by forgetting the users. A lot of people would say, oh, but we are very, user-centric in our approach. But, how many in this room, when your company is developing a new website, are starting by developing on a mobile phone, and then afterwards thinking, oh, what extra kind of elements could we put into the mix here? That doesn't happen. You design for this, and then you squeeze it down, and you figure it out, and you make it interactive. But if you want to be user first, most of us are on a mobile phone. Start there. Then be smart about, oh, what else could I add now that they have more space available?
Yeah.
So I think we are underestimating how bad we are at thinking consumer first. And I definitely think when we talk about being data-driven, it's the user data we should use to create a better user experience. Then we'll figure out how that's going to benefit our business.
Perfect. Don't you love the fact that we have data-driven curtains in the room?
Yeah.
Are you ready for questions?
Yeah. Will they
All
go
right.
up then? Or?
Let's hope. Let's hope they're voice activated as well. So send your questions in for Rika on Data Talks. Bear with me.
Yeah.
Can you... yeah, that one's too Danish for me.
I can read it if you want.
No, it's okay. It's a test for me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of touching on the question I asked before about what are the patterns of success in companies becoming data-driven using the Google stack. What patterns should we be looking out for if it's a failure?
Priority. If this is not a top priority project, it's going nowhere.
Sure.
Usually. That's a little bit back to whether it's from top management or it's a less hierarchic organization, the fact that there's some clear sponsorship and priority on it, you'll have better odds. And then you need to have a willingness to test and learn, because you're moving into an area that, at least for most companies, they're not experts in this.
Yes.
So if you start by thinking that you're going to just nail it, and if not, it's going to get closed down back to the business case approach, it's hard. It's really hard to nail it in the first go. Then you're going to end up spending 2 years getting there, but then you don't learn about the user interaction and you develop the wrong thing. So being agile in the way of working, in the way of prioritizing, I think in Google we work very much with the machine sprints, both for development and creative ideas and design. And that kind of design thinking, and sprinting and really prioritizing really hard all the time.
Yeah.
What's the best use case we have here?
Yeah.
No, they're all good. I know. I don't care. I only want the best. And
Yes.
we're working on that, and we're prototyping, and we're launching in 5 days from now.
Yes.
So this kind of agility, so you start learning, putting it out in the market, getting user feedback, and now we can use that for the next. We overcomplicate by scoping way too big.
Fantastic. So this question, I think, is slightly related. You mentioned Spotify as an example of data-driven. Have they actually, I mean, maybe it's hard to answer this question, but have they actually been running long enough with their machine learning piece to know if it was a sound investment or not?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, how many of you guys use Spotify? Hands up. Okay, so there's quite a cloud in the room. And when I go in and I listen to a song, I myself have a tendency to just listen to the same old music that I like, right?
Yes.
I mean, you know. But then all of a sudden it pops up with all these great recommendations, and 9 out of 10, I love these songs.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, they got something right, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And is that what's keeping me there? Is that stickiness? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Because you're not just allowing me, because I can play my song from anywhere, right? I can play it on YouTube, I can play it on whatever, but here, you're adding value to my journey and my experience, and I'll come back.
Yeah.
I think the point is with Spotify is more, will they long-term make money, like real money?
Yeah, yes.
That is not for me to answer. I think they will, because they're successful on the user side, and they will get to a point. I mean, today, if you looked at Google in the beginning, I think a lot of people, how are they going to make money? These crazy, innovative dudes running around in Stanford, do they know what they're doing? And they raised a lot of money, and people be like, for what? It's just a free search engine. So, I mean, the ability to adapt and figure out how can we build on all of these things and connect the different activities you do, I think we have to not underestimate that very often it does not look like a success in terms of revenue in the beginning.
I'll ask one more question. It was actually from earlier today, and please let me know if it's not relevant for this, but there was a question around data cleaning.
Yep.
And that I think multiple of the speakers today have prefaced that this is a critical piece of the overall story. This was not you who said it. It was said that potentially that the cleaning phase is the boring phase.
Yep.
Why is it boring, is the question.
Why is it Well, I think when you walk in a room, I mean, again, I'm in sales, so walking into a room and talking to sponsors saying, you need to get all this smart data and activate it and create amazing user experiences for your customer service, and that's at least, I don't know if it's the boring, but it might be the hard part, because the easy part is to sell the idea. Everyone look at the numbers and say, okay, I want one of those when you see this guy beating the world champ in Go. Yeah. I want one of those. Look at what it could do for my business. It's not easy, it's not difficult to get excited about that. So I wouldn't necessarily call it it's a very important part, and it is sometimes what is neglected, because we think we have the great idea, we have all the great tools in the world, what could possibly go wrong? So probably the underestimated, very, very important piece of the puzzle to have a success of the data that actually comes out in the end.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. Could you all join me in an applause for Rika?
Thanks for inviting me. Happy to come to you.